Quick, hurry up.
Can I do the thing to the restroom?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
All right, we are on.
That's it.
Yes.
Call roll, please.
Mr. Brahovitz, Mr. McNulty,
Here.
Mr. Bellis,
Here.
Mr. Pierce,
Yeah.
Ms. Harris.
Yes, we have a couple presentations tonight.
We do. First we will invite Jennifer Knoll from the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. So just some background on this. So we will talk about our zoning code rewrite project a little later on, but we just kind of wanted to foreground that with some just relevant information about growth in Central Ohio and kind of the housing challenges and opportunities that we have.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the township a member of the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission?
We are technically not an individual member, however, Delaware County as a whole is a member.
Okay, just curious because I know that was a debate several years ago.
Well, good evening. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the invitation to be with you this evening. Ms. Robinson, I'm Jennifer Knoll. I'm the Associate Director for Community Development with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, or MORPC. And I brought along just some information to share with you this evening, talking a little bit about the growth outlook for Central Ohio and some of the impacts that it's going to be having on our communities, particularly with regard to housing. And in light of the work that the township has underway with the zoning update, hopefully this can be helpful information for the work that lies ahead for this commission. My thanks to Michelle for moving the slides.
Yes.
So just a little introduction to MORPC if you're not familiar with us. We are the regional council for Central Ohio. We have over 80 members from across this 15-county area of service that you see on your screen. And you can kind of think of MORPC like a chamber of commerce, but instead of serving local businesses, we serve local governments as our members. And we do that through a variety of different ways. I like to think of it of these sort of 3 C's. We convene our members and stakeholders around important issues and topics of conversation. We collaborate on a shared vision for Central Ohio, and we connect our members to financial and other supportive resources. It's really one of our most important responsibilities as the Regional Planning Commission to bring as much state and federal resources back to Central Ohio as we can. Next slide, please. So it's really hard to talk about the future of the region without kind of taking a look back at just the recent trends that we've seen with regard to our population. And what we've seen is that Central Ohio is one of the fastest growing metro areas across the entire country. 2020 was the most recent U.S. Census count. Last year in 21, we started to get some of the data back from that count. And I think, you know, for those of us who've been in Central Ohio for even just a few years, anecdotally, we've kind of felt this. There's been this kind of acceleration in the growth that we're experiencing in the region. And the results from the census validated that feeling that we've been experiencing. So there are about 400 metro areas across the country. Among those, Central Ohio ranked 27th in terms of its overall growth rate. Within the Midwest, the Columbus region did exceptionally well. Columbus was the only city to grow by over 100,000 residents in that 10-year period. And as we look nationwide, that actually puts the city of Columbus 9th overall in terms of growth rate, in terms of cities that grew by 100,000 or more. So you can kind of get a sense of how we're doing there. And a lot of that is because we added about 240,000 residents in that 10-year period during the census. Thanks, Michelle. Next slide. So with that information, we remain very confident at MORPC that Central Ohio is on track to become a region of 3 million people by 2050, maybe even a little bit sooner. And as you can see, this is not a new trend for Central Ohio. Growth has really been something we've been doing consistently for decades, and we don't expect that to change anytime soon. Now, I will note that this data is prior to the announcements from Honda, Hyperion, and Intel, for example. So we're working right now to kind of understand what these major employment announcements are going to mean for our region in terms of population growth. But it's important to note that our model actually does take a lot of these factors into account. We didn't necessarily know that Intel was going to be opening its doors here, but we knew that Central Ohio was going to be a really attractive place for businesses to open up shop. And so we account for those things in our model. So what we're really anticipating is that 3 million number probably isn't going to change that much. That's still very realistically a long-range vision. What we might see is some kind of short-term blips on the radar where we have some acceleration of our growth in the next 5 to 10 years. Next slide, please. It's important to note that that growth does not distribute evenly across Central Ohio. It never has, and it's not going to continue to either. And so this map is actually from our current long-range transportation plan. We call it the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and this is projecting out to 2050. But what this shows us is that population goes where population is. And so we expect that a lot of the region's continued growth is going to occur in existing population centers. And those are distinguished on the map by the darker shades. So where you see the kind of white or very light yellow shades, those are areas that are probably not population centers, primarily rural uses today. But as you start to zoom in on those darker shades, the orange and even the dark red, that's where we already have a lot of growth in population. And as you can see, there's Franklin County in the middle, but southern Delaware County is hanging right there. And as we know, Delaware County has been one of the fastest growing counties in the state for many years, and even in the country. So growth is going to continue to occur in these communities where it has been over the last couple of decades. Next slide, please. So we wanted to bring along some data that shows how Orange Township is comparing to the rest of the region. And so what you see here on the left is with regard to population. We have Orange Township in the green bar, Delaware County in the blue bar, and that gray line represents the growth rate of the 7-county region. And what we see is that Delaware County is really surpassing the regional growth rate. It has been, it's going to continue to do so. It's really right there at the top in terms of growth rate for Central Ohio counties. Orange Township, you've got a nice steady trend there. We would not necessarily expect you to see keeping pace with the county as a whole, right? But you're obviously contributing to that growth rate with a steady rate. And then what we see on the right-hand side is projected job growth for both Orange County there in the green, Delaware in the blue, and then the 7-county region with the line. And what we see here is kind of interesting. So projected job growth, kind of keeping pace with the county and exceeding the regional average. So that's wonderful. There's obviously a lot of incentive to be attracting employers to the region. One thing that might be some food for thought is as those employers open up shop and they're attracting more workers, more talent to fill those jobs, where are those workers going to live? Is there housing for them in Orange Township? Are there considerations for where those jobs are going to go at night? And so at MORPC, we're really encouraging our communities to think about, as you're bringing jobs to the jurisdiction, to the community, are you also thinking about where those workers will be living relative to those jobs? Next slide, please. So you may be familiar with this map, but I think it's a good one to bring along. This shows us, this is a map that was produced by the MORPC team, and it shows us the driving times to Intel during peak rush hour. And if you can kind of see Intel there, it's right in the middle of the map, and it's surrounded, thank you, that's fantastic. It's surrounded by a faint yellow line. That represents a 10-minute drive time to the site. Each of those concentric circles out represents an additional 10 minutes. So as we get out to the farthest line, the farthest circle, that dark red circle represents a 1-hour drive time to Intel. And again, this is during peak rush hour. And if we count the counties, there are 20 counties that are within an hour's drive of Intel. So what this tells us, that's even bigger than Morpsey's service area. What this tells us is that Intel is going to be a major player in the growth of Central Ohio, and truly it's going to impact the entire state. Not only in terms of population, we certainly know there's going to be folks, even though there will probably be a lot of folks who live here today that would like to work for Intel, there's probably going to be some folks moving to Central Ohio for that opportunity as well. But we also need to be thinking about the sort of ancillary and support businesses that are going to be joining Intel here in Central Ohio. They're going to be looking at this map and thinking about their logistics and their distributions and where their workers' sort of work shed is. And so all of a sudden this map becomes really telling in terms of where we might expect to see growth in terms of population and jobs.
And Jennifer, just for the board understanding, we are more the orange line here, I believe. So that would be a 30-minute drive.
Yes, yes. And interesting to note, I don't think I brought it. It would be the next slide if I did. But that slide that I showed earlier about growth will not distribute evenly across the region, there's an interesting principle that goes back over time that says that for all of humanity, humans have tended to be willing to walk up to about a half hour or drive up to about a half hour, commute about a half hour from where they live to where they're going. And so within that 30-minute drive shed, as we're looking at the Intel map, that's really where we can probably expect to see the greatest number of Intel workers living. So a number of them might already be within our communities, but there might be some more folks who are looking at that sort of idea of, okay, I want to live in a good school system, but still close to work. Southern Delaware County is starting to look really attractive to those folks. So with that kind of regional outlook, I wanted to bring along some additional information that's more specific to the housing challenges and opportunities that we're seeing here in Central Ohio. So that's where these next few slides are going to focus. And I thought I'd start just by grounding our discussion. A couple of years ago in 2020, Morpsey released a regional housing strategy for Central Ohio. We did this with a consultant team and a stakeholder advisory board that consisted of about 100 people representing our local government members, as well as the real estate development, financial communities, businesses and employers, as well as nonprofits and service providers. And so some of the definitions that we use within the regional housing strategy, this is something that took a look at housing of all types, so single family, multifamily, and anything in between, and at all prices, including not only homes for sale, but also homes for rent, and homes that might be subsidized and available to income-eligible households. So unless otherwise stated, when we talk about housing, we're talking about sort of the broadest sense of the word as we define it with that first bullet. Next slide, please. A few other terms that I think tend to be really tossed around within the housing discussion, and some of them as we go along become a little bit less clear what we're really talking about. But where we have definitions, we've used them. So market rate housing, this is homes that are exchanged in the private real estate market without subsidies. And so typically we tend to think of market rate housing as homes for sale, but homes for rent do also participate within the private market. So we can think about rentals and ownership in that category. A subset of market rate housing, but not exclusive to market rate housing, is the term missing middle housing. This is kind of a recent phrase, but it refers to a range of buildings that are kind of scaled to be about the size of a home, a house, but they might have multiple units, maybe 2, 3, or 4, like a duplex or a triplex. These are homes that are compatible in the scale and form with the context of the neighborhood, specifically with single-family homes for many of our neighborhoods. And they're located in a walkable neighborhood. And I kind of like this phrase, the middle piece of missing middle refers to this product's place in between single family and multifamily structures. And the missing is to indicate that this is a type of home that once was very commonly found throughout our neighborhoods and our communities, but over time we've kind of seen it disappear from the fabric of our neighborhoods. So that's where the missing comes from. So again, missing middle housing is not exclusively market rate, but it oftentimes is discussed in that context. It does offer more choices and affordability to the private market. So now we've got a few more terms here, and then we'll move away from the definitions part of it. Attainable housing. This is actually a defined phrase. The Urban Land Institute defines this as unsubsidized, modestly priced market rate homes that are affordable to households with incomes between 80% and 120% of the area median income, or AMI. Workforce housing, a little bit more loosely defined, but tends to be used to refer to homes that are for lower and middle income working households. and here again, ULI does have a definition for workforce housing, attainable to households earning between 60% and 120% of AMI. So a little bit broader AMI range there. Affordable housing. So typically, in my conversations when I'm talking with folks about affordable housing, we often want to make sure if we're talking about capital A affordable housing or lowercase a. So capital A affordable housing, these are homes that are subsidized through public funding programs. Two of the most common are the Low Income Housing Tax Credit or LIHTC program and the Housing Choice Voucher program. So when subsidies are applied to the cost of construction, as with LIHTC, they help to bring down the cost of rent for tenants. But subsidies can also be used to directly offset the cost of rent, and that's what the Housing Choice Voucher program does. For both of these programs, households need to meet eligibility requirements and go through a series of qualifications in order to obtain the voucher or to become eligible to live in a LIHTC subsidized property. And then the final phrase that I brought along here is naturally occurring affordable housing. These are homes that are affordable to a wider range of household incomes, but that don't have any subsidy attached to them. So they operate within the private market. And as a result, there aren't any eligibility requirements that households would need to obtain. Sometimes where we tend to see naturally occurring affordable housing, or NOAA as it's sometimes referred to, is in neighborhoods where there may be some homes that are perhaps not as well maintained relative to the rest of the market average. But what's nice about NOAA, or naturally occurring affordable housing, is it does represent an opportunity to stabilize existing neighborhoods. So this can be a real opportunity for neighborhoods across our region to ensure that there's ownership opportunities. Next slide, please. So what we're seeing here in Central Ohio is not unlike what we're seeing across the country. The housing market in our region is really competitive and really tight. There's not enough supply for the demand that is out there. And as a result, what we're finding is more and more households are spending a whole lot of money on their housing costs. And when that happens, it creates ripple effects. Most noticeably for households, there's less money available for other equally important expenses, things like transportation, food, healthcare, education, and so on. Next slide, please. And this has become an increasing concern for our business community. We talk with our business community a lot, not only as our partners at the work we do at MORPC, but also through local chambers of commerce, One Columbus, and so on. And we're increasingly hearing that housing is becoming a real priority for the business community. And this is because even though we have this fantastic talent pool here in Central Ohio, employers are still struggling to fill jobs. They're having a lot of turnover. The jobs are staying open for a long time. And what they're being told from their potential talent is that there's not enough nearby attainable housing for them. And so if commuting is a challenge, then housing becomes really critical. And right now we kind of have a mismatch across our region of housing and jobs. Next slide, please. And so a lot of this was really the impetus for the regional housing strategy. I mentioned that this was done and released in 2020. And what we like to say here is that the strategy sets forth a bold vision where growth and post-pandemic recovery help to realize more equity among Central Ohioans, not less. Housing, where it's built or maintained, how it's priced, and who it's for, can be a platform to achieve this vision. Next slide, please. It's a very data-intensive and data-driven process that we went through. And through that data and analysis, we arrived at 5 core issues that are really behind the housing challenges that we're experiencing in Central Ohio. But again, these are not unique to Central Ohio. Really, like other regions, not only in Ohio, but across the country as well, we've got increased competition. This is your basic supply and demand, where we don't have enough supply for the growing population that we have. Barriers limiting access to homes. This is frankly discrimination in the market. We're seeing discrimination in the market as well as in lending practices, and that is keeping households that are perfectly qualified to become homeowners from getting into that space. A limited supply of homes priced for low-income households. Simply put, we need more. We don't have enough supply for low-income households, and we don't have enough subsidy to meet the need either. Demand for more diverse housing stock. So Central Ohio is growing. Our population is becoming more diverse in terms of age, ability, and household size, but 80% of our housing stock is single family, traditional single family 2-story. So if you're someone who has a multi-generational family or you need a single story, it is really difficult to find a product that meets your household's needs in our current environment. And then finally, housing instability among our Central Ohio neighbors. And we define this by taking a look at rates of eviction and homelessness. And particularly in Franklin County, this is a real challenge. Our rates of eviction historically have been higher than other places across the country, including even New York. So this is definitely a concern for our communities. Next slide, please. So as we're thinking about how we address housing, it's always helpful to think about what a healthy housing market looks like. I tend to think of our housing truly like I would an investment portfolio. Investing 101, they teach you about the importance of diversifying your portfolio. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket because that's too risky, right? Our housing market is really the same way. A healthy housing portfolio has a range of options. And this particular slide comes courtesy of BIA of Central Ohio. And this is something that John Melkai talks quite a bit about, the need for every type of housing product within a community subsidized, because we're always going to have neighbors who are simply not going to be able to participate in the market, who are going to need a little bit of help and support. And that's where subsidies can be really helpful. That workforce and missing middle housing for folks who would like to be in the market, but maybe don't have enough to participate at the sort of entry level, which is nearing $300,000 average for a home, to provide options like duplexes, triplexes, that can really help to fill that need. And then, of course, move up in higher end housing. And the reality is we don't have enough housing at any price point. In fact, there's a real squeeze at the top too. And when that happens, that's sort of preventing folks who would like to move up from doing so. And that creates ripple effects across the market as well. Next slide, please. So this information also comes courtesy of BIA. One of the things that we talk with our members about quite a bit is the impacts of residential development on the public schools in our community. Now, I think it's absolutely worth noting that so many households are moving to Southern Delaware County because of the strength of the schools, right? And so I want to acknowledge that this data is at a state level. We don't have local data. This is actually something we're hoping to explore at MORPC because I think it would give us some really critical information. But I have a feeling that we're still going to find that even locally and even in our top performing districts, like where you all are located, we might be kind of overestimating the impact of residential development on the schools. And so we'd really like to get some actual numbers behind that. And the reason I think we might be overestimating is because, as you can see here, across the state level, in an existing single family home, we're generating like 0.317 kids per unit. That number actually goes down for every new build single family. And especially as we take a look at multifamilies, the per average multifamily ranges by building size, but the average is 0.151 kids per unit. So less than one child per unit. And I think especially for so many communities where there's kind of a concern about what impacts are going to be generated by multifamily housing, there's probably some myths and stigmas that we can help to uncover by taking a closer look at the data. And so that range there from 0.076 to 0.191, the larger the building, the fewer kids per unit it generates, which I think is pretty astounding when we think about it. So again, this is state level. I don't want to conflate that with what we're experiencing locally, but I am eager to kind of see what that might look like for our region. Next slide, please. So moving away from some of the BIA stuff and kind of bringing us home in how we tie this all together at MORPC, the reality is residents of Central Ohio not only want more options for how and where they live, but they need it too. Like I said earlier, this is an increasingly diverse region with folks who are going to have a spectrum of needs and wants for their homes. And from MORPC's perspective, while we're at it, this isn't really just for housing that we're talking about, but really thinking about transportation and mobility, how folks get from where they live to where they work, where their kids go to school, our jobs, services, and amenities, that sort of thing. And so we're helping our members to kind of think holistically about all of this and approach this kind of in a singular vision for their communities. Next slide, please. And through the work that we've done over the years with Insight 2050, we can acknowledge that not only is this the kind of market preference that we're seeing right now in terms of wanting options, but by providing options, that's actually a good thing for our communities. The original Insight 2050 study and the subsequent corridor concept study both validated that as our communities kind of think strategically about where growth should go and how folks are going to move about from where they live to where they're going, When we're focused in that approach, we see benefits across all of these metrics here. So certainly there are cost savings for the households themselves, but there's also a lot of benefits to communities. Tax dollars can go a lot farther when we're strategic with our growth choices. We can also provide more and better services in terms of infrastructure, operations, and maintenance. And this is better for the environment, public health, and the health of our dollars as well. So lots of benefits to thinking about growth in this way. Next slide, please. So I talked about the core housing issues that we uncovered through the regional housing strategy and the data that went into it. And I certainly invite you to take a look, if you haven't already, at the regional housing strategy report. There's a lot of great information there, but I think we would have fallen short if that was where we stopped. I really think the heart of the regional housing strategy is the implementer's toolkit. We wanted to identify solutions to address the housing challenges. So even though these issues are not unique to the region, it's really important that the solutions are. The solutions have to be context sensitive to the communities that we have within Central Ohio, and that's what we have with our implementers toolkit. There's over 100 actions with the potential to be started or scaled within our communities, and we have the ability with this resource to zoom in to each jurisdiction to take a closer look at the types of submarket conditions that you have within the jurisdiction and to identify the actions that would make the most sense based on the opportunities or needs that you've identified as priorities within the township. So 111 actions is a lot. That's where the ability to kind of filter through them becomes really important. And we'll see on the next slide here how that works. So there's a number of ways you can filter. I think a great way to start is by clicking on the first drop down, which is city, village, or township. So we can select Orange Township here and see that there's a handful of submarkets. So of the 12 submarkets that exist within Central Ohio, you've got 4 of them along with other actions that could take place anywhere in the region. So that's actually like a pretty solid number. Many of our communities only have maybe a couple of housing submarkets. So the fact that you've got 4 means there's a lot happening, right? And maybe a lot of potential as well. And so for you all to still have 96 potential actions to work with, I realize that doesn't give you a whole lot of funneling here. But what you can do is once you have your curated menu of actions, you can start to take a closer look at the core housing issues or at the action types themselves and really kind of identify where the priorities are for you as a zoning commission, for the township as a whole, and think through what makes the most sense for you. I brought along an example of where this will all lead you here on the next slide. Each one of those 111 actions has its individual housing action profile. So you can zoom in to take a look. What we've got here is the action of removing barriers to development with green tape development review. This is a process that you've already kind of started here in the township with your updated comprehensive plan. Just ways to look for efficiencies in the development review process to make your lives a little bit easier, to make the process a little bit smoother and more expected and regular for the development community. These are all things that can help you to bring more product online in a faster amount of time, and more importantly, to kind of realize some cost savings for your residents as well. So within that action profile, you'll learn a little bit more about what that action entails, along with where it's happening within the region, if anywhere. And then we've got some links to case studies about where this is really being utilized successfully across the country as well. So it's a lot to work with, but hopefully gives you some food for thought as you're thinking about what you'd like to do with this information. If you're kind of stymied with those 96 actions and hoping for a way to more specifically funnel them through, the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. No, thanks. I appreciate it. This is actually where this comes in. So we asked our stakeholder advisory board to help us prioritize among that menu of actions. And so they identified here among the menu, one specific priority action for each of the core housing issues. And these are, I'm happy to say, all underway. I think really things like the green tape review process, which is something that the township is already considering. We're hearing some movement at the State House about the creation of a state housing tax credit. We've seen a number of jurisdictions which have enacted source of income protections for their residents. And we're seeing some great collaborative partnerships that are allowing some innovative programs to come online, not only in terms of construction, but also in terms of resources as well. In tenant-based rental assistance, the need remains great, but thankfully we were able to see some Recovery Act dollars helping to stabilize households over the last couple of years. So we're thrilled to see that these things are already underway in our region. It's a great start and could be good fodder for this group as well as you're thinking about what you'd like to do with the information. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is my last slide here. And I really just use this as an opportunity to acknowledge the work that you all are doing. You know, we're talking about a region that's been growing for decades, but really has had some record-setting rates of growth just in the last 10 years, probably a few more record-setting years of growth ahead of us too. And that means that this is change that's happening quickly. This can be difficult for us, and especially as residents, when the changes are happening in what feels like our backyard, it's personal. And so I know that really makes it difficult to have these conversations. These are complex issues that we're talking about. There's not simple solutions, and it makes the work that you're all doing that much more important. Think of MORPC as a resource for you. This is going to continue to be a priority focus for our agency in the year ahead. We continue to hear from our members that there's a need for more support, more resources, and that's what we're planning to deliver next year. We've got some great programs in the works that we're looking forward to announcing here in the next couple of months. So if we can be of service to you or of assistance, don't hesitate to let us know. And with that, if there's time for questions, I am happy to take those as well. Thank you.
One of my questions on the, back a couple of slides, the definition of late, no, I'm sorry, forward. It was in the, like, slide 22, I think it was. Something like
Okay.
that. I just wanted, yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah, of the housing submarket.
Late century submarket. But,
Yeah, so all of our submarket data is also available online. And what we did here is we took a look at housing market conditions, housing stock, so age and condition, as well as demographic data. We kind of pulled all that together to arrive at what the submarkets are. So what we're looking here, so we've got late century suburbs and late century, does that say exurbs? What that's telling us is, so within the township, you've got some more kind of a little bit denser pockets, some of your newer subdivisions, and then you've got the late century exurbs would be where you've got a little bit lower density residential construction as well. And then the multifamily piece, probably a little bit more self-explanatory. And then obviously high demand exurbs as well. We've got a number of folks who've been moving out, and especially, frankly, since 2020, we've seen even increasing demand for those properties that are a little bit further away from, say, Franklin County or Columbus.
is that multifamily piece there, the aging multifamily, is that assisted living kind of, is that included in that?
Oh, that is a very good question. I don't think it would be, only because that's more of a specific service provision. But this would account for, there would be sort of affordable housing, multifamily. I don't think assisted living is part of that factor.
I don't know how to ask this question and what we can do about it from like a planning and zoning perspective. But I know a lot of people in our township are concerned about single family houses being sold to corporations who are then leasing them out as part of their real estate portfolio. So it's not, it's becoming more of a rental market, which makes it difficult for people who want to move to find market rate single family homes. So I don't know if you all have addressed that and figured out what the future is and how we can help alleviate some of those problems.
Yeah, that's a great question, great point as well. So within the planning community, we've actually been talking about this quite a bit because it's very concerning. And we're seeing it play out in neighborhoods across the region. So even regardless of the housing market the housing market or the census demographics, we're seeing this in a number of communities, and it's very concerning. There's some limitations, right? What they're doing is not illegal, so exactly. You're not going to sort of legislate a stop to it. What we're trying to look into is where has there been some success? We've actually been looking at Cincinnati, where they've been trying to address this a little bit. Now they have a port authority that's been trying to take this on to some extent. And being a major city, they're a little bit differently equipped to handle that. But it's one example where we're starting to see some movement. We're still trying to understand what sort of our options are as a community and how we can address this. But I agree with you. It's definitely a concern. I wish I had an answer for you tonight, but know that it's something that certainly at Morpsey, but even as a planning community as a whole, that we've been concerned with too.
Just kind of follow up to that, but are we seeing, are you all seeing, I guess, the market forces kind of coming to bear on that? Because, yeah, I've just recently read about BlackRock and a couple other ones that, you know, they're not going to be paying out their shareholders because of the interest rates and because all. So I suspect at some point, assuming they're in this thing and can't continue to bear that they'll begin to sell off those properties, perhaps even at lower than what they paid for them, of course. May open up some opportunities, but it's just kind of the cycle. But I don't know if that's anything that you're seeing or observing. Just kind of a follow-up on that.
I mean, I was hoping that since interest rates are going up, that it's not as attractive for corporations. But then again, families are also having issues because interest rates are going up.
Right. No, you're both absolutely right, and that's been our observations too. Obviously the market went wild there, and so we've seen it slow a little bit. Prices remain high. Prices are projected to continue to rise for Central Ohio in 2023, just not as quite a meteoric rate, thankfully. And so what I suspect is going to happen, and why I think it's really important that we're trying to have this conversation and work towards solutions, there's a whole lot of people who want to buy a house. And so the interest rates rising is stalling things right now, but it's temporary, right? The dam's going to break. Especially in a region like ours, we're going to see demand continue to creep up, I'm guessing by the time we get to springtime. And so, you know, if as we're looking for solutions, not only locally, but what's happening nationwide that we can learn from, I feel like this is our time. We've got this little window here before things start to climb again in the spring.
I don't know. I think that there's, can't think of any city, but I thought that some cities were coming up with some creative ways to prevent that mass corporate buying. I don't know under what circumstances, trying to slow that or prevent a lot of that. If making the home available to first-time home buyers with a subsidy or something to try to make it available for them first.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I know some communities, when it comes to rentals, especially like those vacation rentals versus how many are actually inhabited by homeowners, I thought that there are options zoning and planning wise for that, but I don't know about the corporate takeover, as it were.
I do believe there was some, I don't remember if it was just introduced in committee, but I believe there was some discussion at the state level about that, about trying to cap essentially how many homes could be owned by one corporation. But I don't know where that's going.
Is this information for us accessible on your website, especially in terms of the population growth and the need for like a well-balanced portfolio of housing? And the reason I ask is one of the things we face on the zoning commission, part of it is the way our current code is written, which I guess we'll hear about soon as well, but that a lot of people in our community are in that single family housing mindset, and how to educate them that the wave of the future is single family, yes, but it's also other types of housing as well. Expect, like you said, for aging or for starter homes for families and things like that, that we need that missing middle or whatever you want to call it.
Yes. So yes, all of this information is available online. Most of what we talked through tonight is available at the Regional Housing Strategy webpage, but we also have what's called Mid-Ohio Open Data, and that's where you can find the population information that we talked about as well. So all available online anytime. If you can't find it, just let me know and I can send a direct link to you. I think one of the things that we like to talk about it more, seeing that I haven't emphasized here tonight, is that when we're talking about providing more options for housing, we're not talking about taking anything away. It's really an additive property. It's a growing region. That's a luxury we have, is that we can add in terms of the options that we're providing without taking away. And, as we're being thoughtful and strategic with growth, that means that most of our existing neighborhoods are not going to change. They're going to remain single family. They're going to remain the way that they look now in 20, 30, 40 years. But we have opportunities to kind of focus infill and redevelopment opportunities to bring online those new housing options that we don't have today.
Do you all do, and I'm just thinking about similar to that, and I don't know how it would work, but any, to help a community to understand and embrace the idea, that we're going, that we're changing, that it's healthy for your community to have a mix and so forth, so whether that's education or whatever.
That isn't going to happen. We've
tried.
We've had groups of people that sit here and worry about how many people we're adding to the schools.
Yeah.
How much traffic.
How much traffic. They bought their property. They don't want it to decrease with this. I hear what you're saying, but now you're talking about changing the attitudes and what they've invested in.
Yeah, but I think
I don't think there's any
like she
tools
says,
that she may have for that.
it's not taking away what we have. It's
No.
just looking at future development.
Yeah.
We're not going to take away your subdivision.
Yeah.
We're not going to tear down the house next door and turn it into an apartment block. But maybe, off of 23, where we have lots of parking lots and other areas, maybe that's something.
It could be more.
Or if no one send a postcard every now and then that says, hey, this is what's healthy for our community, man. I'm just trying to figure out how you help
I got you.
educate that.
No, but yeah,
But here's the other thing. Orange Township, as I've observed it and been a part of, it's kind of a upper middle class community. The prices are high, the land prices are high, and so when those prices are high, it's market driven. So what they produce is going to be market driven. We're never going to be subsidized housing. We're not going to be low end. We're just not going to be there. And especially as you've alluded to Intel, and we're 30 minutes away, with already the communities growing, you've already added to potentially the market capabilities of what we've already seen from Orange Township. I hear what you're saying. We actually kind of fight for that as developers come in for those multi-families, and we have groups saying, you're at middle schools, We've had whole things that have been turned down 3 and 4 times, and then finally get passed through the trustees maybe the 4th time. So we are struggling with that as a township, not just from my end or this board, but in a variety of locations.
You all, you're in really good company. This has been, a challenge for a lot of our communities. And I really think Southern Delaware County is kind of uniquely positioned in this, and that the sort of just how quickly things have changed and sort of the unique market conditions that you have here. It really is a challenge. So I know that you're not alone in this, that we're trying to continue to find ways to help you spread this message and help sort of talk with your residents about why this is important. And you're right. It's market driven in many ways. And so, where I think the opportunities lie for Orange and communities like you is thinking about sort of your existing residents. A number of our communities have an aging population, right? Our national population is aging. There's going to come a time when for those households, there's going to be real challenges. And so that's the kind of thing where the work that you're all doing can help to stabilize those households, help to ensure that they're able to remain in their homes as they age, or that they have the resources that they need to age in place within the community. And that's not only good for them to help them stay in their homes, but tend to be, anchors of our community too. And we don't want to lose those voices and those perspectives. So they can be sort of part of the solution and part of the way that we're thinking holistically about housing in multiple ways.
It'd be good to see even just some of even how the state housing tax credit stories come along, or other tax credits because they're that idea of providing great quality housing at the nice price so that the development community can sell as well. So.
Very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
I will be sharing this presentation with the trustees as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can email out a copy to all of you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it's important that the trustees,
Yes.
because
Yes.
that would help with the education process.
Yes.
I will let them know as any commission asked you to watch this. It's on record.
Invite her back for presentation.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah, Jennifer and I have talked about doing maybe something as a regional educational training too. So we'll be working with Delaware County and seeing if all the other townships want to get involved. So because it's really just not us.
Yeah.
All right. Next project.
All right. Well, we did want to take advantage of this meeting without applications on it to talk about our zoning rewrite project because we are chugging along on it slowly but surely. And we actually hoped to get ZoneCo, our consultant, in with us tonight. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, they couldn't be there, but we do want to bring them in another time to meet with you all for some direct conversation that way. But in the meantime, Michelle and I are involved with the project on a daily basis. So we do want to take advantage of this time and give you a little update as to where we are.
Go ahead.
I wanted to do this like Jennifer.
Just name and address, please.
My name is Chris Shackroff. I live at 90 Highland Terrace, Worthington, Ohio, and I'm the owner of Melbourne Village Senior Retirement Community. We are an age-restricted community. We built it in 1973. I'm the third generation operating the community now with my wife. And Orange Township is about to dissolve their age-restricted senior living code. And I'm against that. I don't want them to drop that. We've got acreage here. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I've been coming to these meetings lately. I just think it's important not to drop that, and I thought with Jennifer here, she can weigh in on that.
Well, I will say, Chris, that what we are proposing for the new zoning resolution will actually give you a lot more flexibility to do something like that. So
you're not gonna stop the age restriction.
No, it's gonna be more of a blanket residential, a plain residential district, and if you want to have an age restricted development in
You
there,
won't be able to do that.
Well, you would. It just wouldn't be the age restriction. Wouldn't necessarily be through zoning.
yes.
Okay. Because I don't want to lose that, because a lot of our residents come to us because they don't want to live in an apartment building with 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
They like the idea of having a quiet place to live.
I was going to say, and I can't speak for everyone on the commission, but we like, and I think of the community likes age restricted because they know that, okay, they can be denser, potentially less of an impact on traffic, especially commuting time, less of an impact on schools, but they're still supporting the community with tax dollars.
Okay, well,
so
maybe I was
it seems to be a
misunderstanding.
win-win for everybody. So I was a little concerned when you said we're getting away with it because I was like,
Yeah, it's not going to be prohibited by any means.
Okay, well, I've been misunderstood then. It's my fault.
Oh no, it's okay.
It's a work in progress.
Okay, all right. I'm going to say I'll be quiet.
So yeah, just to give a brief overview of where we are in the project. I mean, I'd say we're roughly 60% of the way through. If I had to give it a rough guess, it's really been about a year since this project really kicked off in earnest, which was before my time here. So thank you, Michelle. Doing good work, which we're trying to continue. At this point, we've seen most of the draft text from our consultant, most of the standards, we've worked through at least once. We will be going through multiple rounds of revisions. We have, a lot of work to do yet, but at this point, we have mostly a first draft in place, minus a few sections that we haven't seen yet. But we'll be going through those in the coming months. I'd like to think that we'll be bringing it to you all for a more rigorous review sometime in the middle of the year. But that's all somewhat up in the air. As I see that you are discovering right now, I did print out, so this is Chapter 2, the districts and zones. Michelle, I think I may have forgotten to put them on the computer, but you have them in front of you. I don't want to go over every setback and development standard in here, at least at this point in the project. The one I did want to kind of call your attention to and discuss briefly was this page, section 2.04, where it gives an overview of the various zones that we're proposing.
Sorry, that's page 7 of
Yeah.
the document.
I was wondering.
So page 7, you can kind of see, so 11 total zones, and then there would be a planned district as well, that would, it would be a true planned district, and then these would all be straight zoning districts, as opposed to our current kind of hybrid approach with planned districts. So just going over these kind of briefly, rural residential at the top is basically a rough stand-in for our farm residential, our FR1 district as it is now. I think that it's pretty much a one-for-one swap, and as you look through these, some of these you will see that they're essentially a one-for-one swap with districts that we have currently, but others, will be combined, or there will be some new districts to account for unique development patterns that either exist already or that we want to see. And some, like the PERD, the Planned Elderly Residential District, would kind of vanish, but those concepts would be incorporated into other zones. So we do also have Parks and Open Space Zone that's kind of a specific zoning that is dedicated towards parks and public open space. So that would be essentially a new zone that we're creating. The neighborhood zone will definitely be an important one, so that will be, our kind of our main single family residential. It won't be planned residential. It will be a straight zoning district, but the majority of our existing neighborhoods would fall into that neighborhood zone. So that is definitely one to highlight there.
And sorry, I may have said this earlier, but there will be a planned district, not planned residential, just planned district.
Yeah.
If nothing falls within any of these zonings,
So a standard PUD.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I do have one question.
Sure.
And it's sort of like how to roll this out for the public, because people are going to be like, well, I live in a single family neighborhood. Are you telling me I'm getting rezoned to a neighborhood zone, or how is that going to impact the community? Because I'm sure I don't want the neighbors up in arms because they think we're losing single family.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something we are going to do some public engagement and public awareness campaigns for this, because this will affect literally every single property in Orange Township. And I think how we'll describe it is nothing is changing overnight. There are as I'm sure you guys are aware, there's legally non-conforming. So as long as your property is in compliance with the current zoning code the day before we change it over, the next day you're still compliant. You're still compliant. You're grandfathered in. So there's nothing to worry about from that perspective. And for us as staff, it will make things a lot easier in just lining up. There will be one set of setbacks for everything, which will change. In general, I think the setbacks will not become more restrictive. In general, there might be some cases where that happens, but in general, we're looking at being a little more permissive with setbacks, and it'll just be nice, again, from a staff perspective, to not have 35 different sets of rules for 35 different neighborhoods. There will be consistency, within reason across the entire township.
I don't want to get lost in the details tonight because that's for another time. I really don't. But the 23 overlay has been a problem. Is that, in your opinion, has you gotten some of that worked out? Because the other thing that was always standing there, that all of a sudden trustees didn't want any more automotive related businesses on 23.
Yeah.
Well, that is restricted in the overlay district. So we made those amendments, I think, earlier this summer.
Yep.
We have not received an application since then. So it's really hard to tell if the changes we made are going smooth. Because it's a newer district, and maybe I can talk to the trustees about this as well. As of now, we're not touching it as part of the zoning rewrite.
Because obviously, you know, the overlay district, the way it was, got us into all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have occurred, and it's kind of left us in a weird kind of a spot. Just even with that last car wash that got X'd, you know. So it's like, yeah, there needs to be something definite about that. Again, I don't want to get in the weeds with that tonight because I will discuss all the details of that later.
Yeah.
And that was sort of something that, Dennis, you reminded me of, was the mixed-use district that we tried to have along 23. And instead of being like a walkable community, it was like they were just going to divide it in half and put like, standard shopping center up front and apartments in back, when what we were, at least I thought we were looking for, was a walkable, integrated community where, you could live and then walk to a restaurant or a grocery store and not have to go through, major roads where it might be unsafe.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to name names or anything like that, but
Yeah, and those were things that we tried to address with our overlay rewrite. That text is live and active now, but as Michelle said, we haven't had any applications come in for that, so we haven't seen the results of it. And the plan for the 23 overlay district in the new code is to keep it as is, since we just touched that, and hopefully we fix the problems. But the plan is just to roll that into the new code.
And we all know this is a working document, so our intent is new code, hopefully next year, and then there's probably going to be amendments on an annual basis because we'll come across things you never know.
that we hadn't thought of before in the past.
Always.
And as we go through this, I presume we can get questions, we can reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you're not going to digest this whole document tonight, but I would love, feedback from you, either written, verbal, phone call, email, coffee, whatever you want to do. I would, this is the body that is going to recommend approval or denial, and, we want your feedback incorporated.
How much did you bump into? Or would be a change that would have to be grandfathered in after this gets enacted? Was there a lot, or is that just some real fringes that may have to get grandfathered in?
It's really hard to tell. I don't think we're making, at least on the setback side of things, we're not making it more restrictive. So, like if somebody built a deck last year, it's still going to comply with the standards.
You're thinking have more along setbacks than anything else.
Than uses, yeah. I guess we haven't looked at it as a whole or entirely, but there's not going to be a ton of non-conforming uses.
Yeah, we're hoping not. Obviously, something is going to be non-conforming, just with the amount of changes that we're proposing, but we're hoping that it's going to be minimal.
And, I think of a good example, which, so Lewis Center Village, almost everything in there is non-conforming as it is today. So we wanted to create its own unique district to kind of help with that type housing or development type there, which I guess, they'll be thankful for, because every time they open their door, they don't have to have a variance or, anything.
Yeah,
So.
because there, if something burns down, you
So-
can rebuild.
Evans Farm.
Yeah, so and Evans Farm text is pretty similar to as it is, but we did want to combine it because we've talked about doing that for so long. We didn't have a mixed use, but Evans Farm is its own unique animal. So, but I will support what Robin was saying earlier. I mean, if a coffee date, I mean, this is a lot of information. So, I mean, instead of trying to fixate on a side yard setback for 3 hours in a meeting, if we can try to address those comments with you guys in advance, that would be that would be really helpful. And I'm willing to participate too if Robin needs help, but he should be fully staffed hopefully soon.
Robin still needs a lot of help.
Robin.
Don't we all?
Yeah. But yeah, just to kind of continue through the rest of these zones. Community living zone would be for multifamily or multi-unit. Again, that in theory that is flexible. So that whether that's apartments or duplexes or senior living, we're hoping that those all fit nicely into the community living zone.
I'm gonna raise my hand and ask a question,
Sure.
which has been a problem since I've been here.
Okay.
Of like EPCON and how we treat it. Sometimes it's treated multifamily, sometimes it's treated single family. I'd like to sort of resolve that issue
Yeah.
based upon
Yeah.
our last discussion that
Yes.
we had here. Are these two categories going to address that, the single family and the multifamily, of where that product fits in?
Yes, I mean, and it's something that we haven't really done yet, but I do want to kind of compare, the current zoning applications that we've seen in the last few years and just make sure that they fit into these buckets. But, the idea is that, yes, everything will fit into some category here, and if not, then we have the release valve of the planned district for something that is truly unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just don't want to have to, like y'all, make everything planned.
Yep.
District.
No,
That's what
I
was
think,
thinking. Is there gonna be a
I mean,
limitation?
that was that's, I have my own opinions on that.
Was that last year with that walk out and said, hey, we're just gonna take it to the trustee?
Mhm. Well, that's why I brought it
Exactly,
up.
exactly.
Because
Mostly because there wasn't any place for them to.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
fit. It was sort of a cluster, sort of single family, sort of multifamily,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
but
you-
it didn't fit with our code,
Yeah.
and the neighbors didn't seem happy.
Yeah.
But and I wasn't happy because it didn't fit with the code. I'll be
Mhm.
honest. So I just
Is that fixed?
No.
I mean, obviously, since that was first, you saw that one directly, you had to make a judgment call on that, which you did with those folks. You saw the dilemma
Yeah.
firsthand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Is that kind of taken care of in this?
We're hoping, yes.
Okay.
like I said, it's been a problem for as long as I've
Yeah.
been doing zoning with the township.
Yes, yes.
Where that fits in. Is it like denser single family? Is it multifamily? But it would just make, I think, everybody's life a lot easier.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and it's something we haven't. We might at some point kind of reach out to some developers and get some feedback from them. We haven't done that outreach yet, but we do want to make sure that we're reaching all stakeholders.
I think that's a good idea because I've always, and I focus on this because I think things are market driven. When things are market driven, which they are, market is coming in here. That's your developers. They're the market. They're on the front end of this, not on the back end. Yeah, getting their input about what's out there, what's coming, what they
Yeah.
see is very valuable.
And I see the flip side in architecture of some developers are, like you say, on the cutting edge of the market and they understand. Others are just trying to put as many units as possible that they can get away with. So we have to find the right
Yeah.
niche, shall we say.
Agreed.
But that's the only cutting edge.
That goes back to the market-driven thing. Right? And at the end of the day, I guess any developer is only in it
Make money.
to make money. I mean, that's the end of the day.
Yeah,
But I think
I
that's
agree
where-
that, but I always have a feeling that there is reasonable profit versus
Of course.
obscene profit.
But here's where they're on the cutting edge. They're on the cutting edge, knowing what the market is going to sell. They've done their research and the people who are out there, their demographics, and so they're building what's going to sell. That's the cutting edge I'm talking.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's information. I think it's important to hear from them, but also I think that from our perspective, we also have the responsibility to make sure, hey, it's not just profit driven for the sake of it being profit driven, but it's also as we consider the community and
Community
consider other
absolutely.
opportunities for,
Yeah.
of course, affordable housing to come in and be reflective in the community to make sure we have a balanced stock as well. So I think the two can work hand in hand.
Yeah, because I don't think, I think it's difficult for like new families, starter homes
Exactly.
aren't here.
They're not affordable.
And truth is, I don't see any place where they're going to be.
Yeah.
I guess that's the point I was making, is that the land's too expensive. They're building things that are on that, you're just not going to have them. Looking ahead, whether I want it or not, has nothing to do with what I
Well,
want.
I think it kind of
I'm
goes
just
back to
looking
that.
ahead.
It also kind of goes back to that point of the reasonable profit, right? You know, do I have to? I mean, granted, there's some who want to maximize and take the whole world. There are others who say, you know what, I'm looking at 20% on this project, and I'm satisfied with that. I don't have to have 62%. That's the one that we want to try to support. Yeah, we want to support.
Yeah.
You know, the overall objective. Yeah.
All right. So, and we do have some commercial zones. So the commercial corridor and then the flex employment zones. Those would be kind of the two primary commercial. So flex employment, again, as the name implies, it's meant to be flexible. That would kind of be kind of our main industrial, light industrial, commercial areas that we have now. Green Meadows Drive and Graphics Way, and those types of areas would fall into the flex employment. Then commercial corridor would be more, kind of geared towards what's currently on 23. More traditional auto-oriented development would probably fall in that bucket. We do have a mixed-use district where we do not currently, so that is something that developers can do, a mix of commercial and residential uses. Because as you all know, when Evans Farm went in, that was not the case. We had to bend the rules as much as humanly possible to get that to work. Speaking of Evans Farm, as we've discussed, Evans Farm and then Lewis Center, Old Lewis Center Village, will be their own districts, which is basically updating the rules to reflect what is there currently, and to make sure that homeowners and renters and whoever comes into those communities can do that without zoning getting in their way. Anything else on the districts and zones? I'm kind of going to move on to some bigger picture issues as that we're considering with the code. But any more thoughts, comments, concerns with the districts and zones as they're written? Yeah, again, these are long-term questions.
Was this the document that was shared with the subcommittee as well?
We didn't give them this whole document.
Okay.
No. We showed them one page of it,
Okay.
just for a visual example. And then, so I'll let you digest again most of these standards on your own. I will point out the very back page, section 2.17, building design and materials. For those of you who are architecturally inclined, which I am not, would love your feedback on that, because we are trying to hit that magic spot where we want builders in this community who are going to come in, deliver an attractive product, make the community look good, but we also don't want to make the projects, so expensive that they can't build them, or they've just passed that charge on to the end user. So we would love to try to find that sweet spot. So for any of you, again, who are architecturally inclined, would love that feedback. All right. At this point, I have just like a 6-slide PowerPoint that I'm going to run through talking about, again, some bigger picture issues that I'd love some discussion on, some feedback on, as we wrap up tonight. So yeah, we talked about kind of the missing middle this evening, and one way that we're looking at addressing that in the new code, which would be a big change, but want to know your thoughts on this. So currently, our consultant is recommending, and staff report supports this as well, is looking at permitting duplexes everywhere. So they would be permitted in all, the neighborhood zone, the community living zone, anywhere where there's residential, duplexes would be permitted. Obviously, there's a lot of factors here. In a way, we're running out of land, so we're not going to get 500 acres of duplexes coming in just because we don't have that availability. But it is, it's looking at housing affordability. It's looking at infrastructure capacity. It's looking at land conservation. How can we address all those? And this seems to be a good solution, especially as we look towards redevelopment in the future. We didn't really get into this with Jennifer's presentation, but housing, not only is there not enough supply, just with supply and demand, but also housing preferences are changing. And the large lot single family, it's not unreasonable to think that some of those could be turned into duplexes in the future.
So, for an existing house, if somebody wanted to convert it into a duplex, is the plan to be a conditional use process? Is that okay? So that would just be an administrative act.
Yes.
So let's say my neighbor wants to convert their house into a duplex. Trustees, or y'all just sign off on it?
It would be a zoning permit application, yes.
Okay.
Obviously, there's more steps that they would have to go through with getting addresses and utilities and those sorts of things. But as far as zoning is concerned, yes, it would be, as long as they're meeting the development standards, then
Okay.
yes.
I wonder there might be some public issues with that.
Of course they will. There's been public issues with duplexes every time you've been brought up.
I know.
But we've still been in favor of it, and that's still an issue to be. They're going to be against all this stuff. That's just the way it is.
And the other issue I have, because I have nothing, I think we do need duplexes. I prefer the left side in the top image. My concern with the lower right hand is that you're making the garages prominent.
Oh, I agree.
And that you're focusing, like the house is all garage.
Yeah.
So I would flip that and put the garages on the end, so you're focusing on, especially if this is going in a single family neighborhood, you need to make it look like a single family and have the garage not be prominent.
I 100% agree.
Okay, that's just me off the top of my
I
head.
just thought it was an image, but yes, I agree with you together, yes.
Is that what I don't want to see, especially if this is going in a single family neighborhood, is like a whole row after row after row of like identical garages.
Right. Yep.
That's just for example, Virginia. When somebody comes up with those,
Then I say,
Yeah, you can
flip
say-
it. But what happens if I'm not here?
Well, but we would make standards, to make sure that this type of product
Exactly.
doesn't happen.
That's why I brought it up, is that,
Yeah.
just flip it so the garages are on, they could be side loaded, they could be on either side or something like that. I have no problems even if they want to share a driveway with the neighbor next to them.
Yeah. And this is slightly different, but we do have, and I am glad to see this, we do have a provision where the garage will not be permitted to extend beyond the building line. So garages cannot project outward in front of the building, which is a personal pet peeve of mine.
So, yeah. All right, we're on the same page.
All right. Any other feedback on duplexes?
For the duplexes, is that, I thought she said something about, I know it's going into triplex and quadplex.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a part of that same kind of story there? Or is it
So triplexes and the 4 and 5 row houses, those would be permitted in the community living, but they would not be permitted everywhere. So duplexes would be permitted in the neighborhood zone and rural residential, but not the 3 and 4 units.
Okay. So the other comment I have is in older neighborhoods, there's like two types of duplexes, as it were. The ones you showed there were the side by side, and the other ones are floor by floor. So you would have like an accessible unit on the first floor, and then the floor above would be potentially the non-accessible unit, as opposed to, and that way you could provide more accessible housing. Whereas these examples don't quite address that issue. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that is a good thought. That wasn't something that really I had considered yet at this point, but thank you for bringing that up.
I was going to say, if you look at older models of, like 1920s, whatever, housing, they have both varieties of the side-by-side and the up and down, or they'll take them and they'll turn them into quads or something like that.
Yeah.
I look further northeast you go.
Oh, you could even see it down like in maybe Clintonville or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, like Victorian Village.
Yeah.
Or some of the older neighborhoods in the metro area.
Yeah.
Where they have a more variety of housing style. So, and I hate to flip back, but let's say I want to have a neighborhood store like Evans Farm does. I want to do a little community where I have a restaurant or, I don't know, like I said, community store or whatever. Where would that fit in with the new zoning?
That's a great segue to the next thing.
That's sort of why I brought it up.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were a mind reader. So one place that they would go, they would be permitted to go into the flex employment zone or mixed use district. So there would be those kind of normal commercial routes that those take. So the other thing that we are looking at, and this would be another big change. It's something that obviously we would have to have a lot of restrictions on, a lot of standards for this. But essentially, in a way, thinking of it as an extension of our current home occupation, but an expansion of it. So allowing compatible low intensity commercial uses within residential areas, those would be conditionally permitted. So they would have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals and meet the standards and be approved by the board. We felt that was a good option for neighbors to be able to give feedback, to make sure that their voices are heard, that if it's something that the neighbors really object to, then they have their chance to show up and give their feedback on that.
Favorite story.
Yeah, and so
Wouldn't that reach into all the HOAs? Wouldn't they have to approve any of those things? Because those get to be
Yes.
out of town.
Yeah, and HOAs is, we were just talking about earlier, they can add whatever restrictions on it. So if they don't want any commercial uses, then.
Yeah, or it could be like, I'm thinking like Old State or Orange Road where you have neighborhoods, but on the main artery, someone wants to open a small scale commercial restaurant or ice cream shop or.
We've had inquiries on like a coffee shop on Orange Road before.
Exactly.
And we didn't have anything that fitted, so, I don't know if this will pop up a ton, but just offering the flexibility to have something.
Yeah, something that would be at neighborhood scale.
Exactly.
Obviously,
Because there would be a limit to how big it could
be and
parking and all
or
Yeah.
parking limitations or something like that, size limitations, hour limitations, so it's not like, Quickie Mart where it's open 24/7,
Right,
but,
yeah. And obviously there's a lot of details to be worked out there, but, again, just kind of wanted to get your initial feedback on that. If you have any, absolutely yes or absolutely no, I would love to know now. so we don't, waste time on it, but just curious as to what you thought.
I would say for me, yes, with restrictions.
Yeah.
Because I think that would help to make a more walkable community type thing.
I'm suspicious right now.
Noted.
I'm trying to feel it in my own neighborhood, and I don't feel it just yet. But it may work well in other people's neighborhoods.
You've never been within walking distance of a restaurant or grocery store? It's somewhat liberating.
Yes, I just don't want to see myself walking to my neighbor's house or someone down the street. Anything like it. But let's see what those come.
Like I said, with restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want your next door.
I like the New York.
And it would always be a public hearing process.
Yeah.
So, if the coffee shop came into your neighborhood, we would reach out to the residents.
Or a gas station, I could understand.
Yeah.
That might be an issue.
Yeah. No gas stations.
Thank you.
All right. And then kind of the final thing that I wanted to bring up, I mean, we've talked about this already, but just wanted to bring it out into the open that, historically we've had a very large number of planned districts. I was looking at our township rezonings folder, and there are 226 items in there, 226 folders in that folder, which is a lot. So, again, just making it clear that we would be moving away from planned districts, not entirely. The planned district option would still be there, should property owners want to use it. But, we're trying to move towards straight districts, just making that process easier, simpler to understand for all parties. And just, again, trying to make it clear. It would just be a change from what we have currently. It would be a change in how this commission operates. So just want to make that clear to you all. Again, with the small scale commercial, we would see, an increase in conditionally permitted uses. So the Board of Zoning Appeals might have a busier schedule than they do currently. But just making sure that you all are aware of that. I'm sure you have your own thoughts.
What happens if you get rid of those planned districts? Now those have to be rezoned as to what they are. They're not commercial districts anymore, or you haven't already designated. Is that what we're talking about?
I mean, we have a rough draft of a map, yes. So essentially, all current plan districts would be rolled into whatever zoning district is most appropriate, whether it be commercial or residential.
Well, essentially, that would be left open, which is okay.
Right.
For a developer to come in and then make a decision then as to what happens.
Yes.
Yeah, and so so we're gonna obviously try to match the zoning, courtyards and hidden ravines. We'll try to match with that whatever zone it's closest to, and then if somehow they want to start over there and they want to apply for a different zoning, they would come back here and change. It would hopefully apply for one of these districts listed here, but it would be a rezoning process.
So that we would review it.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It definitely helps staff as far as enforcement goes, because we have 226 different standards that we have to enforce, so doesn't make it easier.
And can you, I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this question. Is our new zoning code sort of going to be on par with what's happening in other areas in the regions and other jurisdictions where they sort of have mixed use or, varying levels of residential densities? Excuse me.
I do believe our consultant is looking at current trends. I do think if the zoning code goes the direction we're heading towards, we'll be ahead of the curve in Delaware County.
Okay.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And not only Delaware County, but even Central Ohio.
Yeah. Okay.
This is something that we're trying to, be forward thinking with this. We're trying to look at Orange Township in, 20, 30, 50 years. What does that future look like? How can we best, encourage that growth and also, respect residents who are here. We are, trying to be on the cutting
To
edge.
be
Yeah,
on-
and-
looking at current trends and trying to, I don't want to use the term modernize our zoning code,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah, and ideally future-proof it. I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the future, but as much as we can anticipate future trends, we want to.
so yeah, I was just curious if they were looking, like you said, at.
Yeah, I mean, City of Columbus is also doing a zoning code rewrite, but that's a 5-year
5-year process.
So, but I mean, you know, they see the need, and it's just going to spread regionally. So,
Well, that's kind of all the big picture, big topic items that I wanted to hit. Again, you know, we will be back with, you know, for more with you guys as this process goes on. Again, we'll take any feedback from you at any point via any means. Feel free to reach out.
Good.
Actually, I'll make a quick comment. Permeable pavers, I've had this discussion with Unilock representatives, where they actually do have a permeable paver that can support a fire engine, school bus, things like that.
That is good to know.
yes, that's good to know. Do you know what kind it is? Just
I will, I think I have some information
Okay.
at work that I can forward either of you.
yeah, it's mainly just for education for our fire department.
Well,
too,
exactly,
so.
that was my, we've had several lunch and learns at the office, to get our continuing education credits, and that's always a thing I bring up, that I'm told the fire department will not allow them. Now, it's not your, you know, standard paver, there's lots of subsurface layers
Right.
that go into it to support either the school bus or the fire truck, but it can support the waves. My goal is just to get rid of all those little pads with the bollards, and make it look something a little nicer in terms of the curb cut.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
no. Thank you for that. I mean, it was something we were discussing. You know, if we have a provision where permeable pavers can kind of go everywhere except fire lanes, essentially, you know, would not be permitted. But you know, again, we want to make sure we're up on current trends, and if permeable pavers can work, then we would love to have them.
Yeah, and I know, you know, they might cost more, but developers might realize that with the permeable pavers, they'll have less stormwater issues.
Right.
And
Yep.
can reduce the size of their swales or underground detention, whatever they're gonna, ponds, whatever device they're gonna use for that. I'll see what I can come up with.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Robin.
We have a couple organizational items.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yep. So you will see in front of you hard copy of the 2023 submission schedule. It's pretty similar to the one we have this year. One meeting in February, one meeting in August, and then one in November and December of next year. Otherwise, 2 meetings per month. I did want to get your feedback on, do you like the 6:30 time slot? Would you want to move to 6, or is 6:30 the 6:30 is the magic number?
I'm
Sometimes,
okay with 6 too, but I know you.
I'll be honest, I am sometimes still at work at 6.
Okay, that is good to know. We will keep it
My
at
day job, the one that pays the bills.
we will keep it at 6.
And then Tuesdays are still good.
Tuesdays are still good.
No.
I have worked my schedule around Tuesdays.
All right. Well, if this looks good to you all, I think I would ask for a motion to approve this submission schedule.
Just say so moved.
You can.
Second.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Bellis,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Thank you. One more organizational item before we move on to minutes. So I will let you know that Adam emailed me last week and said that he would be on vacation for this meeting and would not make it. He also let me know that he is moving to a house in Sunbury, and he will be resigning his position on this commission as of December 20th.
Oh, wow.
So we will be looking for a new zoning commission member come next year. Hopefully that will be in place by January, but see. So just wanted to let you know that news, unfortunate as it is.
Yeah.
So we will not be seeing Adam anymore, basically.
You will not.
All right. I enjoyed having them.
And we'll worry about chair and vice chair at the whatever meeting the first meeting is in January. So.
Yeah. And speaking of the first meeting in January, it's kind of to be determined if we will hold that or not. We may, currently we have no applications that have come in. The deadline is this Friday, so in theory, we could have a meeting on January 10th with an application, but I'm not necessarily expecting that. Depending on if our consultant for the code rewrite is available, we may convene again to allow them to come in and give an update and direct feedback as well. But we'll let you know. Other than that, we just have a meeting minutes, which I remembered to send you all.
Yes.
Unlike usual.
Any comments or changes for our meeting minutes of ZON 22-10?
I have none. Do you have any? Then, can I move to approve the zoning meeting minutes for ZON -22-10 from October 25th, 2022?
Second,
Mr. McNulty,
yes.
Mr. Bells,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Any comments for meeting minutes November 15th, 2022, ZON 22-010 and ZON -22-11?
No comments from me.
No comments from me.
I move that meeting minutes be approved.
Second.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Bells,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any other business?
No further business. Have a great holiday. We will see you.